I finally finished collecting every gold critter in Terraria. All of them with their cage counterparts. That's 2 gold birds, 2 gold bunnies, 2 gold butterflies, 2 gold frogs, 2 gold goldfish, 2 gold grasshoppers, 2 gold dragonflies, 2 gold ladybugs, 2 gold mice, 2 gold seahorses, 2 gold squirrels, 2 gold waterstriders, and 3 gold worms. Now, let's talk about how I got them and how you can get them too. First is the gold bird. This is one of the critters that I had no trouble collecting. I have about 1500 hours in the game. And since birds have spawning conditions that are not only in line with my preferred conditions for a main base, but also in line with half of the world's surface, I've come across them quite a bit. The people that would have trouble getting this critter are newer players that just haven't gotten lucky. If you're really trying to get a gold bird, I recommend trying to spawn other critters with more limited spawning conditions that also happen to line up with the spawning conditions of the gold bird, like the gold ladybug for example. Gold bunnies and gold squirrels are similar cases, so I won't go into too much detail on how to get those. I have no experience with hunting or setting up a farm for any of these 3 critters. They've just come to me, I have like 10 of each. What I will say is that if you set up your main base in an uncorrupted forest, it's only a matter of time before these 3 gold critters pop up beside you at some point. As for the gold butterfly, I can't really recall having to grind this one out. I got lucky and I got 2 of them early on. I won't go into too much detail on it because it has the same spawning conditions as the gold ladybug, except that it only spawns in low wind speeds. So for this critter, take whatever I say later on in the video about the gold ladybug and apply it to the days with wind speeds below 20 miles per hour. For the gold frog, I covered the long rectangle structure I'd previously built for the gold ladybug farm with mud blocks. And using my flower boots and a few jungle grass seeds, I slowly turned the whole surface of the structure into a jungle. I go into more detail about it later in the video, but basically I set up NPC housing all across the structure so that whenever I'm on top of it, the game would think that I'm in a town. When you're in a town, enemies can't spawn around you unless it's a blood moon or a solar eclipse, so besides those 2 events, only critters spawn around you. Once I got the surface set up, I used the minecart to walk me back and forth along the structure, letting critters spawn all around me and letting useless critters despawn as I leave them behind, so that the NPC count wouldn't get too high for new critters to spawn. And since frogs spawn at any time of day, at any wind speed, I didn't have to sleep through or skip any day or night. All I had to do was keep an eye on the lifeform analyzer for the gold frog. For the gold waterstrider, I tried to get all quirky with it by setting up a little structure where only waterstriders could spawn. I tried to set the perfect distance away from a contained body of water alongside with 3 town NPCs, so that the only thing that could spawn would be critters that spawn on top of bodies of water, and then despawn naturally since they'd be off screen, letting me sit there and wait for a gold waterstrider to be detected on my lifeform analyzer for me to pounce on. But after messing with the structure for a while, I couldn't really get it to work how I wanted it to, so I eventually returned to the frog farm, plugged up the NPC houses, and turned that structure into a big jungle lake. That's all it really took for me to have a good waterstrider farm. I used the same tactic of riding back and forth on the minecart, but I also had to sleep through or skip the nights, the rainy days, and days with wind speeds above 20 miles per hour. For the gold dragonfly, what I first tried to do was set up an area where nothing could spawn except for dragonflies. Mobs and critters have limits on where they can spawn. The limits for NPC spawning is like 2 rectangles around your character. One rectangle is closer to you, sitting about a few blocks off screen, and the other is further away, sitting much further off screen. Nothing can spawn beyond the rectangle that's further away, and nothing can spawn between you and the rectangle that's closest. Nearly everything spawns between those 2 rectangles, but the dragonfly can ignore this rule. Dragonflies can spawn between those 2 rectangles just like any other NPC, but it can also spawn on your screen from a cattail. Using this information, you could potentially make nothing spawn at all except dragonflies, making farming gold dragonflies much easier. I built a large rectangle structure made of sand and water with no blocks near me besides the blocks on my screen. In order to spawn, dragonflies need a sufficient amount of cattails and a large enough body of water. I couldn't find anything online giving exact numbers on how many cattails you need or how much water you need in the body of water, so what I did was I made a deep enough pool to where nothing could spawn in it. Because the only creatures that can spawn underwater near a town in a desert is the goldfish, but they need to spawn on top of a block. So if the water is deeper than their spawn limit outside of that second rectangle, nothing will spawn inside of my body of water. But after doing this, I came to the conclusion that I didn't have enough cattails in my water for dragonflies to spawn, so I made the goofiest dragonfly farm ever. I don't even want to get into that. I got some dragonflies to spawn, but didn't get the gold dragonfly at the time, and decided to put it off for a later date. It wasn't until this week when I decided to get all the gold critters that I returned to hunting for the gold dragonfly. When I returned to the hunt, I created a very similar structure to my first farm, but it seemed like nothing was spawning. So I started messing with the structure a bit, trying to get the dragonfly to spawn, and it turned out that they were spawning, but only at a certain distance away from me, which doesn't make any sense. They still spawned on screen, but only near the edge of the screen. It was strange and made it to where the spawn rate was shit. I'm sure there's some elaborate structure I could have made where there's like a ton of spawn points on the edge of my screen for dragonflies, but I gave up on trying to be that smart and decided to just turn my waterstrider farm into a dragonfly farm. As I had previously waited for the gold waterstrider to spawn, cattails have been growing more and more in the lake, so by the time I wanted a gold dragonfly, I already had a huge lake with plenty of cattails to farm dragonflies in. So I didn't really need to change anything. All I did was ride back and forth on my minecart while sleeping through high winds and nights. Also, on a side note, the Terraria wiki says dragonflies only spawn when it's not raining, but I've seen plenty spawn in the rain while farming them. So that just goes to show you can't trust everything you see on the wiki 100% of the time. Next up is the goldfish. I had no trouble getting this critter. It just came to me at some point, but in case you're wondering, all you have to do to farm it is make something that looks like this. A big pool of water that's just a few blocks deeper than the bottom of your screen, and have 3 NPCs nearby. Nothing will spawn other than the goldfish. Just kill the non-gold ones until the goldfish spawns. For the gold mouse, I got lucky a while ago and caught 2 of them with no effort, so I didn't need to farm it. But if you're trying to get a gold mouse, what you should do is dig out a massive rectangle in the underground layer, big enough for nothing to spawn around you as you sit in the center of it, and then build a platform across the middle just long enough for critters to spawn off screen, and kill anything that isn't a gold mouse. Gold grasshoppers have a small chance to spawn when you break a blade of grass or one of the flowers under the list of qualifying vegetation. At first, I had the idea to use my flower boots to spawn infinite flowers to break, which, by the way, are shown under the qualifying vegetation. But when I tried this, the grasshoppers refused to spawn. So I don't know what the deal was with that. But anyways, after my disappointment in not being able to cheese the gold grasshopper into existence, I went up into the space layer and built a dirt platform that stretched across an entire large world. Then I went to the dryad and bought a couple thousand grass seeds to plant on the dirt platform. Once I finished covering the platform in grass, I ran back and forth across the platform, breaking any grass blades that grew. I made such a long platform because I wanted to give the blocks enough time to grow grass before running back over it to mow it down. At some point, I felt like there still wasn't enough grass growing, so I built another platform, and then another platform. 3 was enough though. Those platforms took way too long to build, and I didn't want to make any more. Since the only condition for a grasshopper to spawn is for a qualifying vegetation to be broken, I didn't have to skip any time. I had hoped that skipping through time would make the grass grow faster, but sadly it didn't have any effect. I just had to keep running back and forth, breaking grass, and I eventually got the gold grasshopper. The gold worm was pretty easy to get. I had to go through many worlds in search of surface chests, which contained cans of worms. Each can of worms has a 5% chance of giving you a gold worm, which are some damn good odds. It didn't take too long before getting the gold worm. The gold ladybug was the critter that I had the most difficulty catching. It took me about 51 hours of straight grinding for me to catch 2 of them, and it definitely has the most complex mechanics of all the critters. I basically wasted the first 30 hours of trying to catch it because I didn't know the information I'm about to tell you. Ladybugs only spawn during the day with wind speeds above 20 miles per hour with no rain near towns. That's not all, but let's stop there on the near towns part because that got me fucked up. I didn't see that condition on the Ladybug wiki page, probably because it's only on one of the wiki websites and not on the other one for some reason. But anyway, for the first 30 hours of farming, I didn't bother setting up town NPC housing besides the few that I already had set up on the left side of the tracks. I just figured a gold ladybug would eventually spawn as I rode my minecart back and forth. But since I had a few town NPCs on the left side of the tracks, I saw some ladybugs spawning on the left side, but I didn't notice that none were spawning on the rest of the tracks. And I didn't understand why. I really wish I'd realized sooner that they were only spawning near the town NPCs. Once I figured that out, I made a huge long rectangle and turned the entire structure into a town, setting up houses inside of it, with each NPC at a certain distance from one another, so that I'm always close enough to 3 of them for the town music to keep playing in the background. It was this structure, by the way, that I turned into the frog farm. Since I had realized I just wasted 30 hours, I decided to learn everything about ladybugs so that I wouldn't make the same mistakes. There's another ladybug spawning condition that's kind of hard to understand, so pay close attention. At the end of each in-game day, at 7:30 p.m., there are 2 values set for the next 24 in-game hours. Those 2 values determine the spawn rate of ladybugs, butterflies, and stink bugs. The 2 names of the values are butterfly chance and stink bug chance. Butterfly chance affects the spawn rate of butterflies and ladybugs, and stink bug chance affects the spawn rate of stink bugs. For determining those values, the game first rolls a 1 in 3 chance. If that 1 in 3 chance is true, then the value butterfly chance is set to 999999, and the stink bug chance value is given a random value between 1 and 13. Then the game does another roll, a 1 in 5 chance roll, to reset the stink bug chance value to 999999 as well. Think of these values as denominators, with 1 as the numerator. If the butterfly chance value is 99999, then there's a 1 in 9999 chance that a butterfly or a ladybug, depending on the wind speed, will spawn whenever the game decides to spawn a critter. If the stink bug chance has a value of 1, there's basically a 1 in 1 chance that the next critter to spawn will be a stink bug. A 1 in 1 chance is a 100% chance, so for that whole day all you would see are stink bugs. If both of the values have a value of 999,999, then you won't be seeing either of them spawning all day. Now if instead the first 1 in 3 chance roll failed, then stink bug chance is set to 99999 and butterfly chance is given a random value between 1 and 20. Then the game does another roll, a 1 in 5 chance, to give butterfly chance a value of 99999. How to apply all this information is to understand that there are 3 scenarios. One is that butterflies and ladybugs will be spawning and stink bugs won't. Another is that stink bugs will spawn and butterflies and ladybugs won't. And the third is that neither stink bugs nor butterflies and ladybugs will spawn that day. I understand that all that information might sound complicated, so here's a short little rule book. If you see a stink bug, skip that day. If you see a butterfly, wait for wind speeds to surpass 20 miles per hour. Then you'll see ladybugs. If you don't see any stink bugs, ladybugs, or butterflies in 3 in-game hours, skip that day. None of them are going to spawn. And if you see a ladybug, you're worry-free for as long as wind speeds stay above 20 miles per hour. Also, if you want to farm ladybugs or butterflies, create a Celebration MK10 world to farm them in. Because in that world, butterfly chance value is halved, effectively doubling the spawn rate of ladybugs and butterflies. If you don't know what the Celebration MK10 world is, go ahead and check out the Secret Worlds wiki page in the description below. And if you thought I was done talking about ladybugs, you're wrong. It turns out that if you kill one, it raises the chance for it to start raining. Which, by the way, once it starts raining, it won't stop for at least 1 full in-game day. And if you don't recall, ladybugs don't spawn in the rain, so you gotta wait it out. Not only that, but if you kill a ladybug, it lowers your luck. This is when I really started to learn about the effects of luck. Personally, when I don't understand something in a game, I do my best to avoid it at all costs and hope that in my blissful ignorance, it's not as important as I deep down know inside that it is. So up until this point, I knew almost nothing about luck and its effects on the game. But anyways, to keep it simple, luck has a direct effect on the likelihood that a critter will spawn as gold. So all along, while hunting for these gold critters, I would have probably saved so much time if I just tried to understand how luck works and why I should have raised it. For the gold ladybug, I refused to bother with luck because I'm a stubborn dumbass. But I did, however, learn to stop killing useless non-gold ladybugs. Because for some goofy reason, if you kill a ladybug, it not only raises the chance for it to start raining, right? But it lowers your luck instantly, making it less likely for gold critters to spawn. So after I set up the longest town ever, skipping the nights, the rain, the stink bug days, the days with no ladybugs or butterflies, and waiting out the days with low wind speeds, and letting ladybugs despawn on their own as I rode back and forth on my track instead of killing them, I eventually got 2 gold ladybugs. But even with all this preparation and tact, it took an unholy amount of time for this gold critter to spawn compared to other critters. And I have a theory as for why. When a ladybug spawns, there's a 2 in 3 chance for another to spawn alongside it, then a 1 in 2 chance for another to spawn, then a 1 in 3 chance for another, and a 1 in 4 chance for another. Which means they spawn in groups of 1 to 5. My theory is that the chance for gold ladybugs to spawn only applies to the first ladybug that spawns in a group, and all the sequential ladybugs don't have any chance to be golden. Sadly, there's no way that I know to test this theory in-game, so if anyone knows anything about this being true or false, please let me know. At last, we'll move on past the gold ladybug to the final critter, the gold seahorse. This was the last gold critter that I caught, so I really put all my knowledge to the test on this one. I first set up my NPC housing at the edge of the ocean so that only ocean critters would spawn. Then I set up my bed, my water candle, and my shimmer pool for coin luck. I forget when I started using coin luck, and I don't want to get into too much detail about how it works, but if you throw coins into a pool of shimmer, it raises your luck, which in turn raises the chance for gold critters to spawn. The amount of coins you sacrifice determines the length and the strength of the luck buff. The more money you throw in, the better. With a cap, of course, so you don't get perfect luck. Reaching the cap is super expensive, costing platinum coins, so I think the sweet spot is throwing in 1 gold coin every 3 minutes or so. I also made sure to have a lucky coin and a horseshoe equipped, the 2 items that slightly raise your luck. After that prepping, I set up a structure that made it to where only seahorses would spawn. The structure started at the top of the water, spanned a long distance across the water, and was a height beyond anything that could spawn on top of it. And with 3 town NPCs next to me, the only thing that should have spawned were seahorses, but somehow the occasional crab and sea snail would spawn. But who cares? I sat and waited, drinking my battle potions and throwing coins in the shimmer, and I had to make sure I was looking at the lifeform analyzer every 10 seconds or so, because it takes 12 seconds for a critter to despawn if it's off screen. Eventually the gold seahorse popped up on my lifeform analyzer, I caught it, and that was the end. No more gold critters to catch. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.